Now let's talk about this thing of exercise, because I think there's this idea that if you're going to exercise, you need to exercise for hours at a time, and you need to have big muscles, and you need to look the part. But what is actually needed for a good amount of exercise that's going to give us a benefit?
So the general recommendation would be 150 minutes per week. So, I mean, it depends on your own routine and lifestyle and the time that you have available. So either maybe do 3 days of longer exercise, maybe 50 minutes, or break it up into shorter pieces, maybe 5 days a week, 30 minutes. And you always have the idea of more would be better, but actually your body needs the rest. It's in your rest days that you build muscle and recover.
Okay. Now, it's interesting that you say you can take the time and either do 3 days or more days shorter. Is there a big difference in the impact if you're doing slightly longer, less frequently versus shorter, more frequently?
So it depends on the performance you want to have. So if you do shorter periods of exercise, your performance might be better because you will be able to exercise hard in a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
Versus if you want to stretch the time that you're exercising, and you might not have the energy available for a longer period of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the best form of exercise in terms of strength training versus cardio? Where do we get the best in terms of overall wellness?
So you need a combination of both. So with cardio, usually your heart rate will be higher, which means you burn more calories, and it could be beneficial with weight loss. Whereas with strength training, you need it for good bone density as well. So any bodyweight exercises is really beneficial for your bone density.
Now, let's talk about extremes, because obviously enough is enough, but then you can go further for certain purposes. Obviously, if you're training for endurance races or something like that, bodybuilders are doing a lot of heavy weight training. Is there too much or overtraining or overdoing it?
Yeah, so sometimes you also get adrenal fatigue where your whole body almost just crashes and you're not able to get the performance that you want, and you might even lose muscle mass. So you get up to a point, of course, when you train for Ironman or for a marathon, of course, then you might have longer periods of training at a time. But then, of course, just for a good lifestyle, I would say not more than maybe 5 days a week.
Okay. Now let's go into the food side of things, because obviously you need the fuel for exercise, but when is the best time to be eating? Should you be eating just before a workout, earlier, so you've got a bit of a break for digestion? What's the rule there?
So if you train, for example, in the afternoon, if you've had a good day, you've had a good breakfast, good snacks and lunch, then probably you are good enough to go for training just without eating. But if you train in the morning, it might be a good idea to have a small snack beforehand, just to make sure you have the energy for your training session.
And what sort of snack would that be?
Yeah, so you could have a combination of, glucose for energy and then a kind of fat to keep your blood sugar stable. So maybe stuffing a date with macadamia nuts, or having nut butter, or even adding MCT oil to your water or your coffee. So the benefit that you get from MCT oil, that's medium chain triglycerides, it doesn't have to go to your liver to be metabolized. So it's immediately taken up in your bloodstream. So you get the energy benefit much quicker than any other type of fat.
And then in terms of a post-workout meal of some kind, how soon should you eat afterwards? And should it be a big recovery meal, or is it just a normal sort of meal to satiate yourself?
Yeah, so post-workout is probably the most important part. So if you've had a long training session, more than an hour, I would say just have a small snack of a protein and a fat combined. But maybe if you've had a bicycle ride or 4 hours, then it might be a good idea to have a complete meal of a carbohydrate, a protein and a fat. Okay,
so it's not necessary that you always have to have a full meal after a workout to kind of recover from that.
But you want to have it within 30 minutes after your training session.
If you don't, I mean, what is the impact if you are not eating post-workout to like the recovery time, muscle building, all of those sort of things?
Yeah, so it could be that you can actually lose muscle mass, because after your workout, your heart rate stays increased for a period of time. So when you don't have enough energy for recovery, then your body can actually break down muscle mass as a form of energy for recovery. And also, if you take something like healthy fats, which is anti-inflammatory, that can also actually help for better recovery of cells.
Okay. Now on the market there are a lot of pre and post workout
Yes.
mixes, protein shakes, things like that. Are they really worth it, or are they, and also are there some dangers to them if you're not taking a quality one?
So some of the pre-workouts on the market could actually be very dangerous if used in large quantities. So there's certain ingredients that might be harmful. For example, ephedrine. It's actually a banned substance found in many of your pre-workouts. Also, many of them are high in sugar, so it can actually cause hyperglycemia, so a very high blood sugar level during your training, which you don't want, because if your blood sugar suddenly spikes and then drops very quickly, you might bonk, which we call it. So you suddenly feel very, very bad.
Okay.
And then also sweetness can also be a bad thing. That can still increase blood sugar and insulin levels. And then also a typical ingredient would be L-carnitine. So it can actually be a bad ingredient in a product. For example, if you are on warfarin, which is a blood thinning medication, so that can even worsen the effect of warfarin. And then also if you have an underactive thyroid, it can actually worsen the condition as well. So you have to be very careful when you do use a pre-workout. You can rather have something like your own electrolytes and salt added to your water when you exercise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, people with diabetes or lifestyle diseases like that, where obviously you talk about spikes and drops in sugar levels and things, what would be a consideration for them in terms of pre and post workout eating?
Yeah, so you would definitely have to look out for the carbohydrates that they use. So you don't want something high in refined carbohydrates, which will spike your blood sugar even more. So typically leave out the carbohydrates, rather focus on a protein and a fat, because it's also digested much slower. So it will definitely help your blood sugar levels to stay more stable.
And in terms of a longer workout, let's look at the people who do endurance training, whether it be cycling or swimming or running. You on the road for a long time. Obviously, your pre-workout meal is not necessarily going to sustain you all the way through, so you're going to want some sort of snack. What would that be? What would be ideal for that?
So ideally, after an hour of exercise, you want to start snacking and drinking fluids. So every 15 minutes, having almost like a cup of water with your MCT oil, electrolytes, branched chain amino acids, and then have your snack. So usually a fat will last you much longer because it's digested slower, and then also the healthy fats also have more energy. It's more energy dense. So you can always have something like a nut butter sachet, like a macadamia or almond nut butter, peanut butter, nuts. You can have a few dates, or even something like biltong, because it does have added salts. So when you do sweat a lot, you lose a lot of electrolytes like sodium, magnesium, potassium. So the salts will also help prevent muscle cramps.
Now that's an interesting one, the muscle cramps. So what supplements might somebody be looking at to just support their body when they are doing exercise frequently and regularly?
So you will definitely look at using a magnesium supplement. So if you look on the label, it should be at least 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium, which will be beneficial. And also the type of magnesium is important as well. So you will look for a magnesium citrate, and that's the best absorbed in your body.
And what is that magnesium doing for you?
So it just prevents muscle cramps, and it works together with your sodium in terms of muscle contraction.
Now in terms of that endurance sort of training, if people are doing that, there's also a question around water intake. So you mentioned after an hour, then you definitely need to be taking in water. Is there a chance that you sort of can overhydrate?
Yeah, so just to make sure that you actually don't overhydrate, you can just do a simple calculation. So you can actually check your weight before you started training, and then have your typical training session, and then measure afterwards, just to see what's the weight difference. So to make sure the fluid that you lose, you replace. So to make sure that you actually take enough water with you on a training session, that you're not actually dehydrating when you're training.
Absolutely. And obviously, I suppose, just maintain a good sort of intake of water throughout the day anyway, if you're doing a lot of exercise. And
also if it's a more hot day, then of course you would take some more fluids with you, just to make sure that you're properly hydrated.
Absolutely. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. I think
pleasure.
Lots of great info there, because a lot of people aren't quite aware. They know that you should exercise, but they don't know all the elements around it, which could make the exercise that much more productive. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.